Ever really stop to think about why you eat what you eat? It seems like a simple question, right? But what's on your dinner plate tells this incredible story about economics, culture, and even the weather. Today we're going to unpack all of that, why people around the world eat such different things, using Key Issue 10.1 from your textbook as our guide. So let's dive right in.
Okay, think about something as simple as a slice of pizza. You've got the crust, the wheat for that might have been grown on the Great Plains. The tomatoes for the sauce, maybe from California, maybe from Italy. And the cheese, well, that has its own whole geography. Every single one of those ingredients traveled to get to you. It's not just food, it's literally a living map of our interconnected world.
So let's make this personal. What did you have for lunch today? A sandwich? A salad? How in the world is that connected to global trade, or climate patterns, or ancient cultural traditions? I know, it might sound like a stretch, but trust me, by the end of this, you're going to see those connections everywhere.
Geographers have pretty much boiled it down to three main reasons our diets are so different around the globe. It comes down to a country's level of development, the physical environment itself, and of course, cultural tastes. Just think of these as the three main ingredients that create the world's incredibly diverse menu.
So let's start with the most basic difference. Not what we eat, but simply how much we eat. And right away, this shows a pretty stark divide across the planet.
All right, first key vocab term for you, dietary energy consumption. Now, it sounds all academic and complicated, but it's really not. It's just the official way of saying the amount of food a person eats. And we measure this in kilocalories, which you probably know better as the calories you see on the back of a nutrition label.
Now, take a look at this map. What's so amazing is how clearly it shows the global pattern. See all those deep reds and purples? They're clustered in North America, Western Europe, and Australia. These are all places where the average person is consuming over 3,000 calories a day. Now contrast that with the bright yellows you see across much of Africa and parts of South Asia. Their consumption is way down, below 2,500. It's just a really powerful picture of global inequality.
So what do these numbers actually mean for a person's life? Well, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization says that an average adult needs about 1,800 kilocalories a day just to live a healthy, active life. The key thing to get here is that even though the global average is way above that, that average hides these massive, massive inequalities from one place to another.
And this leads to a tale of two completely different problems. In developed countries, the big issue is often overconsumption. I mean, the average American consumes a staggering 3,800 kilocalories a day, which means obesity is a way more common public health challenge than hunger. But then you look at many developing regions, like sub-Saharan Africa. The average is so much lower that a huge portion of the population is undernourished. They're simply not getting enough food to live a healthy life. And this brings us to a really great pause and reflect question from your textbook. Why is it that in a country like the United States, obesity is a bigger health crisis than actual hunger? I want you to really think about that. Think about the cost of food, right? Access to fresh fruits and vegetables versus cheap, processed foods. And of course, lifestyle factors.
Okay, so that covers the quantity of food, how much. But what about the type of food? Let's switch gears and look at what people are actually eating, specifically where they get their energy and protein from.
Next up on our vocab list is cereal grain. This is basically any grass that gives us a grain we can eat. And wow, are these important. Humanity gets most of its energy from them. The big three that you absolutely have to know are wheat, rice, and maize, or as we usually call it in the US, corn.
This map does a brilliant job of showing where these staple grains rule the world. Just follow the colors. The green is for rice. That's the cornerstone of diets all across East, South, and Southeast Asia. The orange shows you where wheat dominates. Think Europe, North America, Central Asia. And the yellow? That shows where maize, or corn, is a key staple, especially in places like sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. These patterns are so deeply connected to climate and centuries of culture. Now let's talk protein, because this is where we see one of the biggest divides of all. In a lot of developing nations, people get the majority of their protein directly from those cereal grains we just talked about. But in developed countries, meat is number one. Beef, pork, poultry, you name it. This protein divide is a defining feature of the global food landscape, and it has huge implications for health and, you guessed it, the environment.
So you might be thinking, why don't people in developing countries just eat more meat if they need more protein? Well, that brings us to what the textbook calls the greatest challenge of all, the price of food.
This quote right here is so important.
For a long, long time, the global conversation was all about how do we grow enough food for everyone? Well, guess what? We largely do now. The problem isn't the amount of food in the world. It's the economic access to it. It's all about the price tag.
And this brings us to our final key term, food security. Now notice this definition. It isn't just about having food nearby. It's about having physical, social, and, this is the most important part, economic access at all times. If you can't afford the food that's on the shelf, you do not have food security. It's that simple.
This map just drives that point home. Look at the dark green areas, especially across Africa and Asia. These are places where people spend over a quarter, sometimes even 40% of their entire income just on food. Now compare that to the US and Europe in that light yellow, where it's typically less than 15%. So you can imagine, when food prices spike, it has an absolutely devastating impact on people who already spend so much just to eat.
And this chart, this shows the heartbreaking result. If you follow that purple line for sub-Saharan Africa, you can see that after years of things getting better, undernourishment is now on the rise again. It's getting worse. This isn't some abstract problem. It's a real-world crisis, and it's directly tied to the price of food.
Okay, let's bring all this together. We've talked about how much we eat, what we eat, and the incredible challenge of being able to afford it. So what are the big takeaways? What do you really need to know for your AP exam and just for understanding the world?
So here it is, the story of your food, broken down into 4 key chapters. First, a country's level of development sets the stage for how much you eat and where you get your protein. Second, the physical geography, the climate, and soil dictates what can be grown. Third, your culture steers your preferences. And finally, and maybe most importantly, economics is the gatekeeper. It determines if you can even get access to it all.
So I want to leave you with a challenge. The next time you have a meal, tonight, tomorrow, just pause for a second and really look at your plate. Ask yourself, how do I see development, culture, and economics right here in this food? When you start to answer that question, you'll realize you're not just looking at lunch. You're looking at a map of the world.